Hey class, how are you? Sorry I missed last week. I missed talking to you guys. But I think I've got it figured out. If you've clicked on this, this is for your 7,000 class. The way it's been resolved is now it's going to a YouTube channel, and then it's a link in Moodle now. So I'll try to keep it as short and sweet as possible. I want to talk about your posts for the week of September 30th. Today is October 9th. I hope you're enjoying our bit of fall weather if you're experiencing here in Louisiana. It's been lovely. So I want to jump right into it, and I've written my notes on paper this time, and usually I have a Word document up on my screen. So if I look down, I'm just trying to read my own handwriting. So I want to start with Brittany. I'm glad you're reading the materials over and over. Okay, and I know some of it is the same as in other classes, and some of you are getting a little bit confused, but I think it's okay. The way these classes fall in this, in our cohort system, in the timeline, some of the readings are the same. I've inherited both of these courses from previous instructors and just kind of went with their readings, but I don't think at any one time one person was doing these two classes. And so now I'm seeing a lot of those materials are falling at the same time. The benefit of it is you're getting a chance to reread it again, and hopefully it's sinking in, because sometimes you reread it, even me, years later, a decade later, rereading it and going, oh, even more is illuminating off of the page. So please just bear with me, get through it. I know it's very philosophical. Some of it's even in engineering terms, mathematical terms. That's how our founding fathers came up with systems, because they looked at machines and saw how they were interacting and then equated it to how it works in families. I know it's a long shot, but that's how it started. So anyway, bless you for just being patient, rereading. It does sink in. Back at my notes. I also like the examples in aesthetics of feedback being like the temperature in the house. You know, as the temperature gets hotter, something kicks in to bring that temperature back down, right? Or as it gets colder, the heater kicks in to bring it warm. So that is a feedback loop. And also the dog barking in the family. I like that. Kids are escalating, then the dog barks and it brings the kids, it distracts them. It's kind of like what happens with kids and parents. If there's something wrong with the marriage, usually a kid will act out to divert their attention from each other and onto something else and onto them, as a way of de-escalating the heat that's happening in the marriage. I also love the quote you mentioned by Keeney. Families are perpetual climates of change. Isn't that amazing? Each individual varies his behavior in a whirlwind of interactional permutations. Isn't that wild? I think even, I can't remember if this was the video that did not get posted because it was too big, but how Bateson loved to talk about the mind, and there's a therapeutic mind. Families are the mind of a family. Think of your own family as having its own mind, and each person can gauge the temperature of the other and how they behave. I know I do that with my mother and brother all the time. We're in this constant fluctuation. What does he call a whirlwind of interactional permutations? Because we're perpetually determining the climate of the family, or the mind, as others would say. Love that. LaCrystal, the observer is intertwined with the observed. Isn't that amazing? I love that you said something shimmered off the page. Objectivity is erroneous, okay? Because the observer is intertwined with the observed. This is ultimately what second order cybernetics is, or cybernetics of cybernetics. So the same thing. It's I'll jump ahead of, somebody asked to clarify second order cybernetics, black box. Okay, so they use this example in the book, in our readings. Black box is, it's if you were in a therapy room and you observed the family in a box and you were just able to look in the box and go, I can see that interaction. That's cybernetics, or simple order cybernetics, or first order cybernetics, whichever the three you want to use. Second order cybernetics is you are inside the box. Okay, so you're now inside it, and you are now part of the system being observed. So what you say is, look, Crystal, going back to you, objectivity is erroneous because the observer is intertwined with the observed. I love that you brought that out. Okay, Jackie, you wanted a more explanation on first and second order change explanation. Okay, so I had to go back to some dialogue I had made for our 7013 class. My favorite definitions of first and second order change, and Sierra, you did a great job of your definitions. I love this as well. From the actual book Change by Václavic, Weekland, and Fish, this is how they say first order change is when the intervention is applied to the problem. Okay, the simple problem. It's always based on common sense. And our common sense in systems is, let's just do more of the same. In families, let me nag, let me withdraw, let me nag. I'm going to nag more, he withdraws more. I'm going to nag more, he withdraws more. We just think that we keep doing more of the same, it's going to produce a different result, and it doesn't. Then that solution has become the problem. So a first order change is when you assign an intervention to the problem. But second order change is applied to the solution. Okay, so it changes the entire system. It doesn't change the problem, it changes the entire system when you apply an intervention to the solution. Like Sierra, what you said in yours, I'm switching to Moodle real quick. I'm looking at my Moodle screen. Let me see. I liked your examples of, here, I'm sorry, give me a second. A first order example, parent comes in with anxiety about the teenager's solution, her safety. Solution, have the teenager download Life 360 with a tracker on their phone. Okay, so that is applying a solution or an intervention to just the problem. The problem is the teenager is going to be the safety of the teenager. That but the problem, but the solution has been this anxiety. Telling what the parent has been maybe nagging or pressuring or keeping her micromanaged. Okay, that's been the solution. So a second order solution would be to a second order intervention would be to apply an intervention to the actual solution, the attempted solution to solve the problem. Okay, so that's how you determine first and second order change. Going back to Alicia, okay, your explanation of cybernetics is great. We use feedback to either adapt, self-regulate, or overcorrect our functioning within a system. I love that. Recalibration, the system's way of stabilizing itself, making adjustments where necessary. I love that you pulled that you made a note of that. I also made a note of this. I know some of the reading is technical, and a lot of the examples of cybernetics left you scratching your heads. I think some of you said you kind of left even more confused, but just hold on to the ones that make sense. Okay, so if the temperature in the house is an example for you of a feedback loop, then hold on to it. I wanted to bring out an example of something, Alyssa, you said in yours. Back on Moodle. Okay, love this quote. You said, family therapists have historically encountered their clients as either taciturn or language-oriented systems. The former stance, the taciturn, views the client system as a black box that can be observed and operated on from an outside position. The latter brings the therapist into the system, okay? Second order cybernetics, prohibiting any disconnection of the therapist-client circuit. I love that. I love that quote. I think it's perfect. You also asked, Alyssa, you asked for a further explanation of negative and positive feedback loops. I had to turn to the aesthetics from where our readings were, okay? And I know you probably have all highlighted it, but it's on page 72. And so I think we could get caught up in positive reinforcements and negative reinforcements. You learned those terms in psychology when it came to parenting and having pets, and what's better, punishment or rewards. So don't get caught up in that. And I think that's Bateson's actual issue. So I'm going to be reading about halfway down on page 72, starting with the word furthermore. Furthermore, I prefer to think in terms of hierarchically arranged negative feedback. With this perspective, we avoid the dualism that otherwise arises between positive and negative feedback. What sometimes appears as so-called positive feedback, okay, is really, he goes on to say that it's more of a more higher order negative feedback. So really, they prefer to use negative. The next paragraph, the cybernetic explanation, as Bateson in 1972 argued, it is always negative. All right, feedback is always negative. It is therefore sometimes called positive feedback or amplified deviation, is therefore a partial arc or sequence of a more encompassing negative feedback process. I had some notes from a previous, where was that one? I looked up, there's the Encyclopedia of Couples and Family Therapy, just coming out this year. I think it's sometime later this month. It's with Springer textbooks. It's over $800, so I've not gotten my hands on a copy of it. But this is how they actually defined negative and positive. And so they use the word explanation instead of feedback, but it's called, according to negative explanation or feedback, events take a particular course because they're constrained from taking other courses. And so they also explain negative feedback loops as whatever feedback comes out, it is going back into the loop to decrease something that's happened. And so that's where negative is. It's constraining certain behavior, okay? So when they talk about positive, it's a higher order, and positive might be that something else is going to keep happening, like something in the feedback loop is going to keep happening. But when even that it's just another higher order of negative feedback. We don't need to get too deep into it, but I do want you to understand that Bateson always is going to lean back on the word negative. And he even said later on the bottom of that page, he makes a note, and it says, we can always choose to keep the term positive feedback to use as an approximation for higher orders of negative feedback. From this perspective, negative and positive feedback are complementary in the same way as recursive and lineal epistemologies. Okay, so they're the two sides of the same coin, but you're always going to prefer the words negative. Okay, feedback. All right, let me finish this up. I know I wanted to clarify first and second order cybernetics and first and second order change. So I think I've done that. I also want to give you another example of second order cybernetics. We think of the black box, and we talk about that in therapy, but think about a car. Imagine if you were a mechanic and you needed to fix a car because there's a problem with it. So you just opened up the hood and you just looked in it. And that's all you had. That would be a first order cybernetics or simple cybernetics, just looking in. But what if you got behind the wheel and actually interacted with the car? You pushed the pedal down, you changed the gear shift. You could probably see that, oh man, the driver is actually changing gears too hard. They're grinding the gears. Then you're actually a part of the system. So you can see now a wholly different perspective of the issues with the car because you're actually in the car and you're working with the system. Okay, so that could be just another example. And then I wanted to say, Michelle, yes, on your definitions of first and second order cybernetics. I love them. They sound great. And the explanation of the feedback loop. I think you've been right on. I know this material is not easy and simple, but I think you're right on with the more you're in it, the more not simple, but a little bit more clarity is going to happen. Okay, things are going to shimmer more off that page. I encourage you, keep going. You're doing a great job, and we'll talk again soon. All right, bye.